Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. This video is about magnetic energy and prophecy. How does this model relate to prophecy? Well, maybe in a couple different ways, as I will attempt to explain. This is an etheric magnetic model of the universe. And so time in this model is more of a human construct. There's really no such thing as time per se. And so instead of thinking of things like in a linear manner, like a progression of time in a linear manner, this model kind of has things taking place at once, and so you could call them like event columns. So like the planet Earth, for example, would have, geez, an untold number of event columns that at a higher dimension, because this is a quantum model of the universe. So time's kind of irrelevant. Everything takes place at once, but there's magnetic pulsing that kind of controls the sequence of events. And so you have, let's say you have this column, this event column that we were in, or let's say that we may be currently in. And there's parameters on this event column, so it has like a range of magnetic resonant frequencies that basically are the events that are allowable within that event column, if you will. And so this is a little bit of a follow-up on the previous video and how it relates to prophecy. So like in 2010, and there's been, gosh, probably a lot of other dates as well, especially since nuclear testing started, that there have been shifts in that event column. So let's say, like, just for the sake of the argument, like an analogy would be, let's say we're in an event column that has like a shade of blue. So it's not like the solar system or the planet Earth was shifted all the way to like red or something. It's that there was a minor shift to another shade of blue, if you want. And so but the problem is when you have that type of shift in event columns, millions and millions of things change, okay? And so they may be minor, some of them may be fairly significant. But like, for example, in 2010, like I've talked about, there was such a major event that we had to have a shift in the event column, if you will, for the survival and for all kinds of things, for humanity's sake. So how does that relate to prophecy? Well, the thing is, it's easier, and this can kind of relate also to like intuitive hits, lucid dreams, predictions of the future, all kinds of predictions. So it could be on like a personal level, or it could be on a more grand level, like visions of future of the planet and all kinds of visions and prophecies of the future. So what happens is we are in this, like, let's say an event column that has a set of magnetic resonances that are allowable within that column. And we as human beings, there's billions of us, are also within that column, and we are tuned in, if you will, to that energy of that event column. And so when there's a minor shift that takes place, all of a sudden we, to a large degree, a lot of us and most of us, over time, we kind of retune into the new event column and the energies present in that column. So the prophecies and the predictions that were from the previous column, they may or may not occur. There may be different versions of them. They may be in a different event order than previously predicted. And this goes all the way back even, like, say, to biblical predictions. The prophets that made those predictions and the actual predictions and prophecies that were made may not even exist in this other event column, if that makes sense. And now we can talk about the implications of time travel, but I won't. There's a lot there on that. So, but do you see what I'm saying? So like they may have predicted something that wasn't necessarily, that doesn't really coincide with the switch that has been made. And so there may be events that were perfectly valid in that other event column, and in that version of Earth, if you were, that version of the solar system, that either no longer take place, or they take place on a different timeline, or in a different degree, to some degree. So let's talk about, just for a second, we have potential events we have probable events, and we have definite events that will take place within that event column. So probable events could just be all kinds of things on a personal level and a planetary level that can happen, and there's the potential for those things to happen, and that kind of gives us this whole ability to choose within a very large framework of what's happening. Now, the energy coming into the system is relatively neutral, and that gives it the ability, it gives that energy the ability to conform to whatever decisions are made in the event column. And so I'm looking at a quote that I wrote down. So it's this whole idea that the neutral energy within that, relative to that, the magnetic resonance of that column, it can conform and instantly conform to any decisions that are made within the relativity, within the parameters or the spectrum of that event column. And so that's really important to note, that that gives us the ability to move around and do all these great things, and including things on a planetary scale. Now then there are probable events, things that are highly likely to occur, or likely to occur to some degree, and that may be things like certain earthquakes or storms or all kinds of different planetary changes and everything. And then there are things that are definitely locked in to certain event columns, if you will, and that are locked in to the future, if you want to call it that way, of the planet. So even if shifts are made to different event columns to accommodate certain safety measures for humanity, there are certain events that are still definitely locked in to take place, even within those switches, if that makes sense. And that even comes really right down to a personal level. There are certain events that are definite events that will take place in our lives, even as individuals, that have a tremendous amount of support, like higher dimensional support, contractual support, however you want to say that are going to take place, no matter what, basically. And so one of those events that is coming is this transition, the transition that humanity is going through, and that will continue to go through, to a higher level of consciousness and expanded awareness of the universe, a more heart-centered version of living in the universe. And so that is that's pretty much locked in, and that's definite that will be taking place one way or another, even if major switches are made within our planetary events and our solar system events. So and how does that look like? How does that play out for humanity? So one of the ways that this manifests for us is, right now we are in this existence to where there's kind of like a duality, polarity thinking. There's a tremendous, the polarization on our planet right now is so intense, it's hard to even comprehend what's happening. But when you think in terms of different terminology, like good and evil, or dark and light, or low vibration and high vibration, we have this whole kind of duality thing that we are all experiencing right now. And one of the things that's kind of cool about that, I guess, if you want to say it like that, from a low vibration cycle, is that it gives us continuous stimulation and drama, and it makes life interesting, every moment, that we always have this kind of battle between good and evil, and this light and dark and all this stuff. So what happens to that as we transcend or ascend to a higher level of consciousness is we move away from that, and this is a locked in event, if you will, and we move into something that is not binary from good and evil, but it's more like heart and mind. So we have dualistic forces that work together with each other, and then it's like source and self. So you would have those balancing energies. Now the power of this is, and this is partly why it is so critical to move into heart-centered living when you ascend in consciousness. And that is a locked-in event, that we will be moving into heart-centered living. And part of the reason why that is because if you didn't do that and you just simply had expanded awareness, then life would take on a very high level of meaninglessness. Like things would be very boring. It would be like, well, what do we do now? Like, oh wow, there's peace on earth, but what does that mean? It doesn't have any, there's no stimulation, there's no drama, there's no conflict, there's no like stretching us to grow. It's like, oh well, we're all in peace, we're all in love, kumbaya, so what? But here's the thing, when you come from a heart-centered space and you live from that space, and then you have that in combination with the cerebral experience that we have while we're incarnated, you have this universal energy coming through your heart center that provides you with a never ending bliss. So there's a never ending bliss of energy. There is a never ending amount of stimulation that comes through that heart center. There is an unfolding mystery that goes on forever. The source, if you want to call it, or some people would say God, or some people would say the universe, but that energy that comes through our heart centers is always changing. It's always progressing. There's always mystery to it. The expansion of awareness, the expansion of consciousness is never ending. It's always challenging, if that makes sense. So you can see how as you move into that space and people start living from their heart centers, not only does life become far more interesting, far more mysterious, far more intriguing, but the expansion of our growth and our evolution and our technology is off the charts. Because then when you get into that space and you have that heart-centered living, it allows for technology like magnetic energy and other advanced technology to enter into our sphere of society and help us with evolution and progression and cleaning up the planet and traveling to the stars and all these amazing things. And so just keep that in mind, that it's so critical to come from our heart space as we evolve, and in it, to whatever degree that we can do that now, it will also help us as to whether we do that in meditation or we make that effort to tune into our heart space and really try to come from that. And then you have those kind of balancing forces, if you will. You have the cognitive force and the heart force that are kind of balancing to sort out reality and to really kind of figure out the mysteries of the universe. And then you have that heart guidance that leads us in directions that are completely unpredictable, we don't know it until it happens. And it's that connection to universal mind through the heart that is so profound, and it is so much more profound and so much more stimulating than good versus evil and dark versus light and all that. So it's getting to that level is a definite event and series of events that we are locked into as a planet right now. And no matter what happens, and like if you know what I'm saying, so in terms of prophecy and predictions of the future, a lot of things that have been predicted may or may not even come to pass at this point. Doesn't mean they weren't accurate. It doesn't mean that they weren't valid for where we were at. But there were extenuating circumstances that had to make things change. Now there can be brand new predictions and new prophecies that take place as people tune in to the new resonant frequencies that we are exposed to, and that are now resonating on our planet. And there's so much changing. The energy is changing so fast that people that are psychic or that are intuitive are almost having a really difficult time keeping up with all the changes in resonant frequencies and tuning into what is coming. So all I can say on that is do your best to tune in, stay tuned into that energy, do your best to tune into your heart center, and believe it or not, that really is linked to advanced technology and expanded awareness and everything. So, with that said, I wish you the best and wish you the best at tuning in to all the changes taking place, and I will see you next time.